So it's like the entire month of August, I don't really remember. I have like bits and pieces of like moments that maybe happened. As a whole, I don't remember August. What's really cool about all of this is that it made my OCD worse. Hi friends, what the heck is up? How the heck are you? As you can tell by the title of this video, this is the long overdue life update. If you're subscribed to the channel or keep up with my videos, I guess, then you might have noticed I have been a little absent from posting content here on YouTube for a little bit. I promise I have a good reason. In today's video, I will be sharing where the heck I've been, what the heck happened, and I will tell you the story of how I forgot who I was, who my husband was, and everything that happened in the last 6 years of my life. Before we get into it, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future content. Hopefully there won't be a ton more life updates like this, but I do post a lot of cozy, bookish, fun, crafty content, so definitely subscribe if you are interested in any of that. So I want to preface this by saying this is going to be the long story long. If you want to see the long story short, head over to my TikTok, I'll have it linked down below, and I posted a video sharing all of this in a much more condensed form. Obviously, this is a long story, and I wanted to be able to share it long, I guess. So that's what we'll be doing today. Go ahead and grab your tea, grab your coffee, and buckle up, because this is a crazy story. I do have all of my notes of like what happened, basically an outline on my iPad. I did use this in my TikTok to help me get through things quickly, so I will be referencing that if you see me looking down or if it sounds like I'm reading. Just a forewarning. Like I said earlier, this is the story of the time I suffered from depersonalization, which is forgetting who I am, amnesia, so I forgot the last 6 years of my life, I forgot who my husband was, I forgot that I got married, I forgot where I was, like everything. I also suffered from short-term memory loss, so people would tell me things and 30 seconds later I would forget them. My story actually starts in May of 2025 when I watched the Laura DIY and Healthy Gamer live stream about Laura DIY's anxieties. And when I watched this video or this live stream, I was like, holy guacamole, I relate to all of her anxieties. She has emetophobia, agoraphobia, and generalized anxiety. That's what she's currently diagnosed with. And especially the agoraphobia part, I was like, wow, that's me. I don't know what to say, like literally shocked and bewildered. And she mentioned on the live stream how she is prescribed medication and she can't see herself like basically existing as a normal person without the medication. So I was like, oh, something might be able to help me. That's crazy. Because of all of that, I ended up seeing a psychiatrist here. Woohoo! Very exciting. I was so proud of myself for actually going because number one, agoraphobia, scared to leave the house, but also number two, like it's really kind of embarrassing to talk about. Like I wish it wasn't, but it's embarrassing to talk about how like all your fears and your anxieties, I don't know. But when I was at the doctor's, they did diagnose me with agoraphobia and OCD. Now, the OCD is the part that I was like, whoa, I thought that I just had anxiety. No, turns out I have OCD. So because of this, my doctor prescribed me with 20 milligrams of fluoxetine. Fluoxetine is basically like an off-brand Prozac, I guess. So for the rest of this video, I might call it fluoxetine, I might call it Prozac, but they are essentially the same drug. So he prescribes me 20 milligrams. He says, start on this, see how you feel. Typically the dose for OCD is 40 milligrams. So he said, come back, let me know how you're feeling, and we may up you to 40 because that's typically what I prescribe for people with OCD. I was like, cool, I'll try this, and in a month I'll see you again, and hopefully we'll have next steps. I don't know. While taking the 20 milligrams of Prozac, I was feeling a lot better. It was like existing wasn't so hard anymore. Everyday life in our house wasn't as hard, and then leaving the house also wasn't as hard. Still, I was having panic attacks outside the house. I was still having my OCD like compulsions and like spirals, but it wasn't as bad by any means as it was when I was not on the Prozac. After I let the Prozac like kick in a bit, I did start doing ERP, exposure and response prevention with no CD. This is the typical, I guess, strategy for treatment. This is the treatment for OCD, where basically you are facing your fears and you are showing your brain that these things that you thought were scary aren't actually scary. I started doing this, so this combined with the Prozac, I was doing a lot better. I was leaving the house and eating food in a restaurant, which is crazy for me. I was going to the thrift store like almost every day. I was going to a coffee shop and just reading, just hanging out outside the house. So this leads us to the end of July, where I had a check-in with my psychiatrist. I told him that things were easier, but I was still having panic attacks outside the house and like things were still hard. And he said, well, then I'm going to go ahead and up you to 40 since that's the typical dose for OCD. And this should help you even more, but keep up with the ERP because that's really going to help you a lot. I said, rightio, doc, let's get into it. That leads us to Friday, August 1st. On Friday, August 1st, I decided to make a THC cocktail. This was a grapefruit and rosemary 10 milligram THC cocktail. It was from a bottle of like THC infused drink, I guess, that we got from a Total Wine & More. And I used that and grapefruit juice and rosemary syrup, and I made myself a drink, I made my husband a drink, and I made my friend a drink who was also over. So my friend and my husband were just like, okay, it looks like you're having like a bad high, sleep it off, you'll be fine in the morning. Saturday, August 2nd, I woke up and I still felt high, I still felt crazy, I felt like I was floating, I did not feel comfortable in my body, and everything was just weird. Like I felt weird is the best way to describe it, but I still was managing. I was still able to function normally as a human being. I just like felt off, you know? Then on Sunday, August 3rd, this is when things went downhill. So I woke up and I felt even more disoriented. Everything was just really weird. I remember going on my phone, going on ChatGPT and asking, hey, like, it's been 2 days since I had this THC cocktail. Is it bad that I'm still feeling like high from it? Also, like, what should I do? Like, even if it's not bad, how do I help myself? And a lot of what it was saying was like, oh, like do grounding techniques. I was like repeating like mantras, manifestations, I guess. I don't know. But I specifically remember it told me to write down my name, the date, where I was, that I was safe, and that my body would like come back to center. So all day long, I was repeating to myself, hi, my name is Bridget. It's August 3rd. I'm home. I'm safe. I feel weird right now, but I trust that my body will bring me back to center. All day. I had it written down on a piece of paper and I was repeating it over and over and again. My husband was like, this is weird. I don't know why you still feel like this, but like, okay, you'll get better. One of the other things that ChatGPT said to do was to try going for a walk and like grounding yourself. So we tried to go for a walk, but the entire time I was on the walk, I was looking at my husband saying, what is going on? I just was repeating that over and over again. And then he looked at me and he's like we got maybe a couple houses down on our street, and he said, okay, like clearly this isn't helping. Let's go back home. I was like, okay. So we came back home. I don't really remember what happened from the walk to sitting on the couch later, but we end up sitting at the couch later that evening and I wasn't feeling well. And so I looked at my husband and I said, hey, I'm not feeling well. Like, I think I need to call out of work tomorrow. And he's like, okay. And I said, okay, I'm going to message my old boss. Let's call her TJ and tell her that I can't work tomorrow. And he said, haha, that's funny. Why would you message your old boss? And I said, what do you mean? Like, I have to tell her I'm not going to work or she'll be mad. And so he was like, are you serious? And I was like, yeah, don't know why this would be not serious. And he said, okay, if you're serious, then we need to take you to a doctor. I was like, okay, sure. He was like, okay, should we go to the ER? Should we not go to the ER? He ended up doing a telehealth, I guess, consultation with a doctor at our computer before deciding to go to the ER, just to make sure, like, are we being dramatic or should we go to the ER? And we got on the call. I don't really remember this call at all. I remember that it happened, and I remember that the doctor said, go to the ER immediately. And so that's what we did. We got off the call, got ready. I grabbed one of my squishmallows and a blanket, and we went to the ER. At this point, I was asking the same 3 or 4 questions over again every 30 seconds. I was asking, what's going on? Where am I? Who am I? And who are you? So I was asking these questions to my husband. I was asking them to the doctors, to the nurses, to anybody that was around me, because I didn't know the answer. And so as soon as whoever I was asking would answer my questions, I then would go ahead and ask them again, because my short-term memory was shot. So every 30 seconds I needed answers again because I forgot. The ER doctor was very confused, didn't know what was going on. He said that this was not a normal interaction between these 2 drugs, from what I can tell. So you should be admitted to the hospital, because apparently we went to an ER that was not connected to a hospital. So we said, okay, whatever you say, sir. And we got into an ambulance. Well, I got into an ambulance and I was taken to the hospital. I was admitted, and there we were, you know? At this point, I was in the hospital and they were asking me, hey, do you know what year it is? No, sorry, I don't know. And who is the president? And I said, I don't know. Should I know the answer to that? And he was like, yeah, probably you should know the answer to that. So like I said, I didn't know anything. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who my husband was. I didn't know what year it was, the president. I did not know hardly anything. So once we were at the hospital, again, it was Sunday night. So we basically had to just stay the night, wait until the morning to do testing and to see like a neurologist and all of that. So I did end up getting an MRI of my brain and an EEG. Everything came back normal, and they basically ruled out the big scary stuff. So I didn't have a tumor in my brain. I wasn't having a stroke. I was having, like, my brain waves were normal. That's what they check with the EEG, I believe. So basically I got all these tests done and I got absolutely no answers, which was not ideal. So I did end up spending 2 nights in the hospital. And then I was sent home to recover. The way my husband explains it is that I went into the hospital and I was basically a 5-year-old. I didn't know anything and I was repeating myself over and over again. And then by the time I left the hospital, I was marginally getting better. He said I seemed like I was maybe 10 years old now and could remember a little bit. I also could answer questions based on context of the room. For example, what year it was. There was the date on the whiteboard. Where I was, I could see the name of the hospital on the wall. So I was able to start answering some questions. And then I slowly started to get back my memory of like the past 6 years, or the pre 6 years. Not this last 6 years. So like I still didn't remember my wedding, but I remembered working for who I worked for pre-COVID. I remember like my family. I remember my dogs. I remember like that kind of stuff. But again, wasn't remembering the last 6 years. Before I was released from the hospital, my husband did call my mom, and so my mom flew in and she came to help out, stay with us, try to get answers with us. I don't know. Yeah, so we ended up leaving the hospital the same day that my mom flew in, so that was perfect. She was able to come home and just like help us exist. So when we left the hospital, the doctors did say to continue taking my Prozac. They genuinely had no idea what was going on. They told me not to have any more THC, and they told me to go to the doctor that prescribed the Prozac and see what they have to say about this whole situation. So we were like, okay, cool. And like my husband was saying, he he didn't understand why they were letting me leave, because I still wasn't better. I still wasn't myself. Like we said, I was still basically a 10-year-old. So it was kind of confusing on like why they let us leave and I wasn't better. And they didn't have any answers onto what was going on. Regardless, I did end up leaving after 2 nights. And when I came home, my mom was here. She was helping out so much. She is an angel sent from the high heavens. I mean, same with my husband. They both are the most incredible people I know in this world. So huge shout out to them. But I ended up sleeping for a week. So my husband and I are calling this my sleep week. He said that I slept for 20-ish hours every single day. So I was awake for maybe 4 hours every day. And he said that when I was awake, I was hardly there. Like I wasn't there mentally, which checks out because I don't remember this week like at all. Maybe I remember like bits and pieces. I'm pretty sure we went to Target at some point. My therapist calls this my sleeping beauty week because we should be putting a positive spin on things, you know? So call it what you want, but I was asleep. And now currently I like don't remember anything from this week. Another thing that happened during the sleep week is I went to see the psychiatrist that diagnosed me the 40 milligrams of Prozac. And his response was, well, based on your charts, you look like you were dehydrated and you probably were poisoned. Okay. We explained to him, hey sir, actually like she made the drink for herself. She made the drink for her husband. She made the drink for her friend. She's the only one that had a reaction. He said, anything can happen. Sure, anything can happen, but why would she poison, you know? And then he insisted that there was potentially another drug mixed into the cocktail that we purchased from the Total Wine & More. And maybe, like, I guess this is possible, but it's not, like, we bought it from a nationwide liquor store chain. Like, that would be crazy. That would be, like, national news if there was another drug slipped into this drink. Also, at this point, I started experiencing something that we are calling brain zaps. So we also brought this up to the doctor, where it felt like I was regaining consciousness over and over again. So both the doctor and my mom and my husband were telling me to let them know anytime that like it happened. So at this point during my sleep week, if I was awake, they said it was happening every 15 minutes where I felt like I was getting a brain zap and I felt like I was like regaining consciousness. I just kept saying, I feel like I just got here. So every time I said that, was a brain zap. So we again told him about these brain zaps and he said, that's weird. Drink water. So that was the extent of what he had to say to us. So again, he said, stay on the Prozac and drink some water. So that's what we did. We left the doctors and came home, stayed on the Prozac, drank some water, and was just like trying to survive. I was experiencing these brain zaps for the next 2 weeks. After my sleep week, my mom did end up flying back to Florida because it was like, okay, like this is what it is right now. Like there's not really anything else she could do. The brain zaps were starting to become less frequent, I guess. So when I first went to the psychiatrist, it was happening every 15 minutes. And then by the end of 2 weeks of having these brain zaps, like post sleep week, so I guess 3 weeks, I was having brain zaps for 3 weeks. At the end, it was happening every couple days. So the time between was extending. That was a mouthful. I was trying as hard as I could to get back to normal. I was trying to go back to work, but there was still so much that I was forgetting. Also, during this time, I was having some symptoms that we thought were like potentially OCD related. This is where it gets kind of weird and kind of trippy. So again, I don't really remember these 2 weeks either. So it's like the entire month of August, I don't really remember. I have like bits and pieces of like moments that maybe happened, but like as a whole, I don't remember August. So that's scary. But like I said, I was having some symptoms that I thought were potentially OCD related. So number one, I kept feeling like I made it all up, like it was all fake, that I never was in the hospital, that I never lost my memory, that my mom never came, that I would just like, it was a dream and I'm waking up. So again, I think it's kind of like OCD, but also these like brain zaps where I would wake up and be like, oh my God, like that was such a weird dream. No, that was real life. The brain zaps, again, like I was saying, started to get less frequent. So like that was good, but it was causing a lot of anxiety because I would tell my husband, oh my gosh, I feel like I just got here. And he would say, you've said that before. And I'd be like, what? And he's like, yeah, you've been saying that for the past 2 weeks. Like, and I was like, oh my God. So then I got a lot of fear of like it happening again, like being scared that I was going to have another brain zap and I was going to like forget everything again, because it's kind of like every time I got a brain zap, I was forgetting what had happened prior to the brain zap. Hopefully that makes sense. But another one of the symptoms that I was having was I felt like everything was fake, especially in terms of content that I was consuming, but also even just like talking to people. It felt like I was the one that was coming up with whatever words they were going to say, whether it was in a video, whether it was in a book, or like literally talking to my husband. I was like really paranoid that I was the one deciding what he was going to say. This whole symptom is so hard to explain. Like it was so trippy and so disorienting. So it's like on top of everything that was happening, I also like felt like I was going insane. Like I was having a psychotic break is what it felt like. I knew rationally that like if I was watching a video, I wasn't the one deciding what this person says, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was. It was really hard to watch specifically like book content because obviously booktubers, book talkers are going to talk about the books they're reading and they're going to say what the book is about and they're going to say who it was written by. And I felt like I didn't know that information. So I was very anxious about watching the content and feeling like I needed to know the books, the authors, and what it was about, because if not, I was making it up. And then that would mean like the video was being made up. It's so hard to understand. But by the end of like my brain zap, these 2 weeks, I finally came to the conclusion that, okay, I can't consume new content. Maybe I can consume content that I've already consumed before. So like old content, I guess. Naturally, I am going to relate this all back to books. When we went to Target during my sleep week, I did pick up Metal Slinger by Rachel Schneider. I had seen some recommendations for this book, so I was like, okay, let's give it a go. I started reading it. This book made me realize that maybe I needed to read or consume content that was familiar. Because if you've read this book, you know that they end up on a boat. They end up on a boat, and it's for a long time. While I was reading it, I thought that I was the one that made them stay on the boat for so long because I didn't know what was going to happen next. So because I didn't know, I wasn't letting whatever was going to happen because I wasn't sure. This sounds so crazy. I know that. So I was reading this and I was like, I am going crazy. Like I can't read this. So I ended up picking up a new book. I picked up Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry, and this book convinced me that I wasn't going crazy and that I am not the one that decides what happens in books. I am not writing these books. That's not what's happening. So I got a couple chapters in, I think, and then I was like, okay, but I'm not in the mood for this. So it was nice because it helped me bring myself back to reality. But I still wasn't in the mood for it. I then picked up Sword Heart by T. Kingfisher. This was supposed to be my book club book. We were gonna have book club on September 9th. That did not happen. I read maybe a chapter and I was like, I can't do this either. And it was still like, I knew I wasn't the one that was like writing the books, right? I wasn't coming up with it, but it was still hard to read. It like caused a lot of anxiety. So then I proceeded to watch a ton of Gilmore Girls. I have seen Gilmore Girls a million times, and I decided let's just watch Gilmore Girls. And I ended up watching all 7 seasons in a week. We'll get into how I managed that. In terms of books that I have already read that would be familiar, I wanted to pick a series that I guess A, was a series, but B, was silly goofy, C, low stakes, and D, wasn't gonna make me cry. Like, I did not need to feel any more emotions, you know? So, naturally, I picked up Ice Planet Barbarians by Ruby Dixon. This is exactly what I needed to read, so much so that the next day, I picked up the next book, Barbarian Alien. Read that in 2 days, and then I picked up Barbarian Lover. Read that in 2 days, and then I read Barbarian Mind. So here's the thing. These books healed my soul. Crazy. That's all I can say about that, okay? Do I recommend them? I refuse to answer that question. I decided, my husband and I decided that the side effects that we thought that these brain zaps were happening because of the fluoxetine, because of the Prozac. And that was like the least common denominator, or like most common denominator? I think the most common denominator of, like, that's the only thing that's different from my normal life. I was taking this medication, so maybe this is what was causing me to feel so weird. Every single doctor that we met with at the hospital, at the ER, I went and I saw a general practitioner, the psychiatrist, everyone said, don't stop taking the Prozac, that I'll have withdrawal symptoms and that they'll be worse than what I was going through. So I stayed on it. But at this point, I said, I can't take it anymore. I will go through any withdrawal symptoms in order to feel not like this. So that's what I did. It was a Friday night. I would have ideally contacted the psychiatrist and been like, hey, I want to wean off of this drug. But again, it was a Friday night and I couldn't contact anybody. I guess the only other option would have been to potentially go back to the ER, but like, that is expensive and not something that we were going to do. Well, we were open to it. If I needed to, we were open, but I was going to try to just like go through it on my own. So that's what we did. I stopped taking the Prozac and basically felt better immediately. Basically was night and day after I stopped taking it. No more brain zaps, and I started to feel normal-ish again. I think it was maybe a week after I stopped. I did end up seeing a GP. We told him everything, and he said, this is crazy. You need to talk to a psychiatrist. Like, I am not an expert in this field. Good luck, you know? And so later that day, I did go see a new psychiatrist to get a second opinion on what was happening. And they looked at me like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Don't know why this happened. Good luck. She said that she could prescribe me a different medication for my OCD. Doesn't know why any of it was happening, and at this point I wasn't ready to try another medication. I still was like recovering from everything that was going on. Like, I don't even think it was all completely out of my system yet. I just wasn't, that isn't what I wanted. So we said no. We said maybe in a couple months we'll come back and get a new prescription for something else, but like for right now, I need to just learn who I am again. What's really cool about all of this is that it made my OCD worse. So I was having these OCD spirals at home when I typically wouldn't have them at home. I also was starting to have symptoms of a lot of the other OCD, like, subtypes, I guess. So contamination OCD, I have been washing my hands like crazy. Just right OCD, a lot of checking OCD with locks and stuff. I did end up talking to a talk therapist about this, and she explained that like it kind of makes sense. Like, it sucks, but it kind of makes sense because I went through a traumatic event and my body is now hypervigilant of, my body and mind, I guess, are hypervigilant of what's going on. That something that was supposed to be safe for me, medication, wasn't safe for me. And like now I am hyper aware of things being like, okay, I thought this was safe for me. So it is this doorknob now not safe for me? I have to wash my hands immediately after, that kind of thing. So Because of all this, as you can imagine, this was a very traumatic event for me. I then started to suffer from some PTSD, some depression, and some really bad nightmares. This was a really, really cool combination of things. And by cool, I mean like not cool, like sick and twisted. Because I was depressed, so I wanted to sleep naturally. However, I was having nightmares, so I was scared to sleep. I was having nightmares about waking up from comas. So constantly, like that's basically what had happened for the last 2 weeks of August, was that I felt like I was waking up from comas. I know that that's like not actually what was happening, but it's like that's my best way to explain how it felt to have those brain zaps. PTSD, depression, nightmares, but no sleep. So I was running on like 3 to 4 hours of sleep every night, and it was hard. During this time, I watched so much Gilmore Girls because I still was suffering from that, like, I don't know what's going on. I need to consume content that is familiar. Lots of Gilmore Girls. That's how I managed to get through just so much of it. At this point, I was literally just trying to get back to normal. I was seeing a therapist for my OCD. I was seeing a therapist for my trauma. I was just trying to exist. I started to tell people what happened. This was helping a lot with the OCD, where I was like, I don't know if this is real. So actually telling people the story was helping me like solidify that it did happen and that this was real and I'm not making it up, especially when like my husband would be in the room and like confirm everything. Like that was helpful for me and my recovery, I guess. So at this point, nobody knew. Like nobody knew what was happening. It was my husband that knew, my mom, like my immediate family, and that was it. Nope, like even the friend that was over that night, she didn't know. During all of this, I wasn't on my phone. I forgot it existed, which was actually pretty nice because now I'm like chronically on my phone again, which is horrible. But yeah, didn't post any content, wasn't texting anybody, wasn't answering any messages, no phone calls really, unless it was to immediate family that was like prompted by my husband or my mom. Bestie Emily actually ended up messaging me during this time, and I would like give vague answers and like sometimes not respond to messages, or my husband would respond. But eventually at the end of the month, she's like, girl, like, are you okay? What's going on? And I was like, oh, I'm feeling better. And she's like, feeling better from what? Like, what is happening? And then I was like, oh my God, she doesn't know. Anyway, I was on FaceTime with her and told her everything, and she was just shocked and bewildered. Same girl. So once I started telling people, it started to feel more real. That was cool. Eventually, one night, I don't remember what day this was. I want to say it was in September. But eventually, my husband is scrolling onto TikTok one night, and he sees a TikTok that basically, essentially says that the person who was posting it can no longer have grapefruit because they're on an SSRI. And if you don't know, Prozac is an SSRI. So my husband saw that and he was like, what? And he started reading through the comments. He started clicking through like the blue links that happen in TikTok. And this is how my husband and I learned about the grapefruit effect. If you don't know, the grapefruit effect is basically there's something, a molecule, a compound, I don't know, in grapefruit that inhibits your body from breaking down certain medications, certain drugs. So, for example, SSRIs, also blood thinners, and I think other medication as well. So you shouldn't be consuming grapefruit juice when you are taking medications, just in general. Good rule of thumb, I have learned. Turns out, not just was the drink that I had that night grapefruit, there was grapefruit juice in it. Also, I was drinking a glass to 2 glasses of grapefruit juice every single morning for the entire month of July. Plus, probably those 3 days after I went to the hospital, or before I went to the hospital, I was drinking grapefruit juice. This was brain-altering information. So, what did we do? Naturally, we took this information to a friend of ours that is a psychiatrist, and we said, hey, we saw this. Is this real, or like, is this fake, basically? And he said, this is very real. Tell me what happened. Let me see if I can help you. So we told him everything, and he said this was probably something called medically induced delirium. So essentially what he thinks was happening is I was having so much grapefruit juice. I was taking the 20 milligrams of fluoxetine, and then I upped it to 40. So my body was used to being on 20 and grapefruit juice, but then I upped it, and then I continued to consume the grapefruit juice. And so essentially my body was overdosing on Prozac because my body could not break down the Prozac that I was consuming, and so it was building up and building up and building up and building up. Turns out it's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. And by a strange twist of fate, and probably not in the way that the doctor meant it, but my first psychiatrist that said that you were poisoned, or that I was poisoned, actually wasn't wrong. Like, I was poisoning myself with grapefruit juice. That's not what he meant. He didn't mention grapefruit. He thought it was going to be another drug that I was poisoning myself with. But at the end of the day, I was poisoning myself with grapefruit juice. Crazy. I know what you're thinking. What about the brain zaps? Was that from grapefruit juice? No. According to our psychiatrist friend, turns out that brain zaps are actually a common, or like, I don't know if it's common. I don't know if common is the right word, but it is a possible side effect of some SSRIs. He was like, I think that your body just can't handle 40. He said, if you felt good on 20, then great, stay on 20. But if you felt bad on 40, that was going to probably happen. Those brain zaps were going to happen regardless of you having this like OD instance. Whether or not I overdosed on Prozac, I was probably going to have these brain zaps. That's crazy. Nobody warned me about grapefruit, and nobody warned me about brain zaps. So after we figured all of this out, I went ahead and made another appointment at a third. Okay, so technically it was at the same office of the first psychiatrist, but with somebody else. So I called and I said, hey, can I have an appointment with someone else? And they said, yes, actually, your first psychiatrist that you had an appointment with doesn't work here anymore. So you're gonna have to see someone else. I said, great. Also, what's the tea there? Give me the tea. I didn't get the tea. Unfortunately, no tea was shared. So I did go to this new appointment and I told her everything. I said, this is what we have learned from our doctor friend. This is what we learned from TikTok. This is what happened. And she said, holy guacamole, why were you drinking so much grapefruit juice? I said, because I liked it, because it's yum. And she said, that's crazy. So basically she agreed with everything that the psychiatrist friend said. She thinks it was medically induced delirium. She thinks that my brain zaps were just a symptom of the Prozac. She said that when she was in medical school, of course, they teach you that grapefruit can inhibit certain medications and that to kind of stay away from it, but was also taught that it would take a large quantity over an extended period of time in order for real symptoms to occur. That's exactly what I did. I had a very large quantity over an extended period of time. So like I was the person you read about in textbooks. So I did end up getting a new prescription. But anyway, that's the story. Oh, I think I should also tell you, I did end up, after we saw the TikTok, I went to the pharmacy that I got the prescription of Prozac from, and I asked them, I said, hey, am I missing something? Like, does it say here on the bottle? I looked through all, like, the big packet of papers they gave you, the literature with your prescription. It didn't say anywhere in any of it that I should be avoiding grapefruit. And so I came back to the pharmacy and I said, hey, am I missing something? Was it said somewhere? Was there an additional piece of paper that I should have, like, received? Or maybe I did receive and I threw it away. Like, is there something that I'm missing here? And the pharmacist said, I can see how and why there would be an interaction, but no, it doesn't say anywhere in any of the information from the manufacturer that you should stay away from grapefruit. So it's literally not my fault. Nobody told me not to. Nobody told me not to, which is crazy that nobody told me to avoid grapefruit. Anyway, that's the story. The last thing I wanted to update you on is the book I'm reading now, which is so exciting. But I am reading The Irreversible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy, and this has been so fun. It's written by Bridget Knightley. This is another book that I bought at Target during the sleep week This is an ode to sleep week. It's actually good, and I'm having a good fun time. The banter in it is a lot of fun. I will say it's written a little weird because it's written in like British English, I think. I'm not sure. Don't make fun of me for that, but I'm enjoying it. I do recommend so far. Obviously, I'm not done with it yet, but this has been a good fun time, and this is reminding me on why I like to read. So hopefully this is the end of this saga. One thing though, I will never shut up about grapefruit and not combining grapefruit with drugs. So if you see me posting on here about grapefruit, share it with your friends, maybe repost it so that other people know. So this doesn't happen to anybody else. And I will absolutely be continuing to post TikToks about grapefruit. So if there's one positive that comes out of this situation, is that hopefully I'm helping prevent someone else from going through the same thing. That is my goal. That is all I want in life. That's not true. I want like a lot of books too, and a lot of puppies. I want a lot of puppies and a lot of books and a lot of coffee. Anyway, that's it for this video. If you made it to the end and listened to this whole thing, big shout out to you. If you made it to the end and you haven't subscribed, what are you doing? Don't you feel bad for me? Don't you want to subscribe? Help a girl out. But yeah, that's it for today's video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time for hopefully a lot less eventful video. Hopefully no more crazy life updates. Bye!